Actually better than this. Well, that's nice. Oh, did you find it? Is that their camera? Yeah, cool.
So then are we using the rooms like integrated audio?
So
Okay.
I don't think we even need this.
Okay.
Or the
Vowel.
yeah.
You want me to like message Elizabeth and ask her to hop on the Zoom so we can test the sound? Okay.
Kind of quiet,
They're good or bad.
guys.
This is it.
This
Yeah,
is it.
I like this.
Well, thank you everybody for being here. All right. Thank you everybody for being here. Again, I want to call to order our regular meeting number SP 2025-03. It is Monday, March 10th, 2025, and this is a City of Steamboat Springs and Yampa Valley Housing Authority Joint Collaborative Leadership Retreat. And in lieu of roll call, we will be going around the room and having everybody introduce themselves. So we will use that as our roll call for the meeting. So be sure to state your name and whether you're with the Housing Authority or with City Council, so that can be captured with the note. And again, before we get started, I did just want to provide more information on the retreat procedure. City Council and YVHA Board of Directors may give direction to staff, the consultant team, the project collaboration team, and Brown Ranch Community Deliberation and Stewardship team, but no motions will be considered. Public comment will not be taken during the retreat, but public comments are encouraged through the following. Either email City of Steamboat Springs at citycouncil@steamboatsprings.net or through the city's website at steamboatsprings.net. You can also make a public comment at our next meeting, which is a regular meeting, will be Tuesday, May 18th at 2025. We take public comment at 6 o'clock, kind of around in there, or after the city manager report, whichever comes first. The Yampa Valley Housing Authority, you can send email comments to inquiry@yvha.org. And again, the next opportunity for public comment at a YVHA Board of Directors meeting will be Thursday, March 13th, 2025. And so with that, again, just encourage everybody and respectfully request that we all speak slowly so that anybody that's participating via Zoom can understand us, as well as make sure we announce our names, our affiliation, and speak loudly. So with that, I will turn it over to whoever's going to run the show.
Yeah, I guess that's us. How is everybody?
Good.
Awesome. Great. My name is Clark Anderson. I work for an organization called Community Builders. We're a nonprofit organization based down in Glenwood Springs that works with communities around the West that are trying to navigate challenging issues related to growth and change. And we're really excited to be working with you guys on this challenging project, an important project. I want to take a moment to quickly introduce my colleagues with the Civic Canopy, which is another organization that works on these issues. I'll let you guys introduce yourself. I don't know. Do I go first, Ken?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Bill Fulton of the Civic Canopy, and I'll let Kale tell us.
And Kale McMonigal, Collaboration Director with the Civic Canopy.
Together, we are working with you all in your community on exploring a potential pathway forward on Brown Ranch and seeing where your community can arrive on that important question. It's a very important project, dealing with some very challenging and important community issues in terms of how are we going to address these important challenges related to housing and maintaining a workforce and having an economy that works. So all of these things that you all know, I think, are very important. And as a entry point for the process, which is going to be a process that we're going to be leading together with you all, it's going to be orienting a lot towards collaboration and robust community involvement and deliberation, which is an idea we'll talk about tonight to make sure we all know what we mean. But it's intended to help your community come together and problem solve together collaboratively and work through some of the challenges and the questions that need to be addressed, and then collaboratively roll up their sleeves and try to identify solutions that can work. We're not going to spend a bunch of time going into how the process is going to work tonight, because I think all of you have been briefed on that, or if you're part of the council, we've had a lot of conversations about it already. So that's not the intention. Instead, tonight, one of the things that's really important about this effort is the relationship between the city of Steamboat Springs and the Yampa Valley Housing Authority. And when we did the situation assessment that we did in the last couple of months, one of the things that we identified as a topmost priority for being able to move forward on this and any other issue really is to strengthen the partnership and collaboration between these two bodies that are really aligned around some very important work, but have the opportunity to work together more collaboratively and more effectively. And so we're really here. That's the big idea of why we're here tonight. As it pertains to getting specific in this project, we want to get into a couple of key things. One, we want to think about how can we lead collaboratively and support collaboration through this project? What are the foundations of effective collaboration and effective leadership in an effort like this? Get a little closer, so how can we work together effectively during the process and beyond? And then how can we be effective as community leaders in this effort? That's a question that's come up a lot when we've talked to city council, is we want to know, okay, we're going to try to empower the community to help guide this. Where do we stand in as leaders, and what's the role we play in that? So we're going to talk about that quite a lot tonight. And hopefully the idea is that we are then enabling both productive collaboration and leadership as we go forward from here. Then we're going to be talking about what do we really want to get out of this? What do we need to achieve through this process? And we'll talk about the kind of key points and along the way that we want to fill in the gaps on. What do we need to understand or learn at those different points? And that's going to be a big part of the dialogue in the end here. And then we're going to talk about where we move forward from there. So this is our sort of guidance for tonight. Our hope is that you guys leave tonight feeling comfortable in terms of how you all can show up as leaders, how you all can collaborate effectively, and that we're getting this effort started off in a way where we're really beginning from a very different place from the last time the process started, which was one of negotiation and really trying to come at it from a very positional nature, which came from a very understandable way of seeing it. But now we're trying to really make sure we're orienting around how do we come together first, find a shared direction together, and work through all of the challenges and problems and opportunities and solutions that are there collaboratively. And then what's the role of you all as leaders and as bodies in guiding that forward? So that's really what we're focused on tonight. Did I miss anything, guys? Awesome. With that, we're going to start by sharing a little bit of what we already know about what effective collaboration and leadership can look like. And I want to hand over to Bill. Oh, thanks, Bill. Yeah, forgot the next step here. And Gail, you mentioned this. We're going to do some introductions here. I got ahead of myself. We're going to go around the table and just one word to describe something you either want to feel or experience out of working collaboratively with this group for each person. So you're going to say your name, your role, so who you're with, and then just, one or two words to describe what you're hoping to feel out of this. You feel comfortable going first? Put you on the spot. All right, go ahead.
Dakota McKinley City Council Partnership.
Kathy Meyer, Vice President of the Housing Authority and 6-year City Council member. I want to experience openness.
And how many years on Planning Commission?
15.
Yeah, let's just not stop where you go, man. Michael Bacino, City Council, collaboration. I want to experience collaboration with everybody here. That's the same thing with partnership, I think. So good call.
Great.
Michael Ann Lamott, YVHA board member. I want to experience progress.
Progress.
Okay, great.
Angelica Salinas, Route County Commissioner. I want to experience creativity.
Amy Dixon, City Council, and I'm gonna go with transparency.
Patty Ward, YVHA, and I want to experience trust that the public trusts.
Jessica Bolland, Housing Authority. I want to experience productivity.
Leah Wood, Housing Authority Board Chair.
I want to experience all the things that everyone has already said, but specifically, I'm with Maddie. I want to make sure that we are transparent to the public. And for roll call purposes, I wanted to let you know that Patrick Phillips, who is a board member for YVHA, is online.
All right, Gail Gary, City Council President, and again, ditto, all of those things, but we'll focus in on collaboration and trust.
Here's why BHA board member, public trust.
Reese Freeman, YVHA board member, and I'd like to experience more certainty than uncertainty.
Joella West, Steamboat City Council, and I would like to experience shared goals.
Cole Hewitt, YVHA board member, productivity is the word that took right out of my mouth.
Brian Swintek, Steamboat Spring City Council. The word I would want is open-mindedness.
Mark Halverson, Housing Authority, confidence that we're gonna have some results.
Catherine Carson, Yampa Valley Housing Authority Board Member. I'm gonna say absolutely enthusiastically all of the above, and I'm gonna add success. I want this to work.
Steve Montine, Steamboat City Council, new thinking.
Lou Zadora, YVHA board, optimism.
Wonderful. Well, that feels like a very, I got excited thinking about pulling those things off. I think these are things that we want out of this as well. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Bill. You guys over the next stage.
And along with that, just it's a deep honor to be here with you. I've heard about this project for a long time. Those of us, we work around in every county in the state, and affordable housing is the central challenge for every community. So I was talking to Gail, like I feel like this process starting off, as Clark said, being a part of it is a real honor. We wanted to bring 25 years worth of experience of this very question. How do we achieve these goals? How do we collaborate well? I think in public life, we just assume if we get a bunch of people in a room, that constitutes collaboration. And there's really an art and a science to it. So we're going to try to boil down 25 years of research and experience into about 5 slides to share with you kind of what do we know of what it takes to do what you're about to do effectively. And to try to kind of start it off with a little bit of storytelling. How many folks have heard of the Nurse Family Partnership? A few hands. Great. Well, Colorado happens to be one of the true hotbeds of effective collaboration. We've produced internationally known facilitators, groups that have gone on to do extraordinary things, community-based groups that have found ways to overcome tremendous challenges, and a ton of research about that. And I think one of the most powerful studies that has ever been done was conducted on the Nurse Family Partnership. So for those of you that don't know what it is, it's probably the best researched intervention in the social science literature. A visiting nurse will visit a mother who's experiencing a first-time pregnancy, who's low-income mom, where there's potential risk factors involved, and that nurse will show up once every 2 weeks visiting that young mother. And they provide education, and they provide mental health counseling, and they provide friendship and knowledge. And if that nurse stays with that mom for 2 years, the difference between kids that go through that process and kids who don't have that experience is night and day in terms of income over the lifetime, entanglement with the criminal justice system, education completement, job satisfaction. It's just a remarkable difference. And we've studied this longitudinally for years, so we know this program works. But what the researchers in Colorado were looking at is like not every community has the same level of completion for that nurse staying with the mom. So Colorado had this remarkable case study challenge. 16 different communities were about to adopt this model and to take it on. So there was this chance to study what would be the differences in how those communities went about this. Would we see different rates in how they, the different rates at which the moms stayed with the nurses? And so what they did 2 things. They tried to figure out what would explain what affects whether or not a mom would stay in the program for 2 years. And they had 1 category, so what might come to mind that might influence whether a mom stays with that kind of a program, if you were a researcher. Yeah, how much time? The ability to meet with the nurse might be one. Something about the mom's life, education levels maybe. the turnover rates of the nurses. So you can start thinking about all these individual variables. And the second thing they studied, which is relevant for us tonight, is what was the quality of the process in a room like this when a group of people were selecting this program? Health workers, public health workers, human service folks, parents, sitting around like you, deciding if and how to take on this project. And they would evaluate, as we will tonight, how did you feel in that process? Was your voice heard? Did it feel like you were working towards common goals? Did it feel like everyone there had a shared vision and thought about the fairness of everyone's engagement? And when they looked at the completion rates 4 years later, after those decision-making process, what do you suppose they found?
Funding was an issue.
Actually, funding wasn't the factor. It was the quality of the process that was more important, it was twice as influential in health outcomes than all of those other individual variables combined. The turnover rates of the mothers, the experience of it. So the quality of the process of a group like this, it's like it sent a signal out over time, 3 and 4 years later, to affect the lives of mothers and children in that program. And what the kind of researchers began to theorize is that what ends up happening is if a group of people creates a high quality process, they really trust each other. They know that they can influence things fairly. They know that their voice matters, that they're working for a greater good. They generate commitment. They put their life energy into it. They show up for meetings. They're bought into it. And that commitment leads to stronger cooperation. The way the trainers got the message about the program picked up the signal of the leading group, and that led to effectiveness or downstream health outcomes. So it's a chain reaction of commitment from a group of people. And when we talk about, well, what is a high quality process? How would we know if we're in the middle of one? These were the kind of salient things that really came down to, and which we're gonna try to bake into every step of the way with you all. Is fairness, is a basic sense of those that are affected by a decision. Do they have a say in it? Does their voice matter? Equality, do voices, are they equally situated? Or is there some group of folks that have a bigger influence given their position in the world? A goal orientation, if you show up into a room, can I tell that everybody's here for our common goal? Or is there something about it that everyone's actually out for just their self-interest and they're thinking about their particular group or their back home needs? And then finally, authenticity. Do stakeholders feel like they're the ones actually doing the work, or is all of this going to not matter to anything and someone else in some room elsewhere will be the ones that really decide it? And if those indicators were high, that people really believe and know that they're in something that's authentic, and that's when we see those incredible outcomes downstream. And when I was learning about this 20 years ago, when we were putting together the civic canopy, I was like, this just can't be true. This feels a little bit hard to believe that we send in motion in rooms like this, these signals. But I started to think, you know, that is what we pick up on when you're in a room and you're in a process. You can kind of feel it. But then a few years later, there's a team at MIT who wasn't really, they were asking slightly similar questions, but in a very different way. They invented a different way to measure this. They had folks in different corporations wear these badges as they went about their work. And so the badge would kind of pick up tone of voice and the kind of heart rate and how people were interacting as a group. And they would wear these around and they would kind of, at the end of the day, collect that data. And it would be like what they called an energy signature. It would show the way in which people in that team interacted. And they would do this with professional sports teams and investment firms and banks and schools. It didn't really matter what the group was. They could kind of get a story. Now, it wasn't like people in the organization just sat around at a table away, but this was what they kind of summarized it as. Have you ever been in a team that was like this or felt that way? Where the width of the line is the interaction between the people across the relationship, and the size of the circle is kind of how dominant was that person in that meeting? So what does this person say after the meeting?
It's a great meeting.
Great meeting. Look, I got so much done. I love it. What does this person say after the meeting? Oh my gosh, I don't want to go to that meeting again. Didn't really contribute. So this is the energy signature of the lowest performing team at a bank call center. And the researchers at MIT they'd never met these people that knew this was the lowest performing team. Because this is the signature of a group that's not going to perform to its best. And so they decided to do something. What they did is instead of doing a training on call center management, they simply introduced one intervention. They routed all the calls away so this team could have the same coffee break for 20 minutes every day. And what happened on that coffee break? They talked. The newest people on the team went up to the more senior people and said, just got this call. It drove me crazy. How do you handle this? How do you? Well, I think about it this way. And they just naturally interacted much more as a team. And so after about a 3-month period, and they did nothing but make sure they had chances to share knowledge and experience and talk about how things were going. This was their energy signature, and they were amongst the top 3 performing teams in that call center. So of course, they instituted this across the bank. We need to get people flowing energy back and forth. So although it's not always easy to do, you can't visualize this. Every group you are part of, this one included, will develop some pattern. We'll try to prompt it over and over. Which patterns are we developing? How are we getting the energy, the commitment, the engagement of the folks that are central to this flowing so that you come up with the best ideas? You come up with the trust, the new thinking, the optimism. All of this is a flow of energy in a group. And there's certain conditions that produce that. And so when we talk about what does it take to collaborate, well, I hope you have this image in your mind, and I hope you have that story of the nurse family partnership. You are sending a signal in time, 3, 4, 5 years later, about everyone that will come in contact this will pick up on the sense of commitment, sense of engagement that you all have as key leaders in this process. And we try to kind of boil this down into just a handful of dance moves that will be informing a lot of this process. As I said, we want to make sure that we include the voices of those that are affected. So we'll talk a lot in this process about how we're designing that outreach. And we're really going to rely on you all to know, how are we going to hear from everybody that you want to hear from? We're going to engage in thoughtful dialogue, conversations about the things that matter most, not trying to convert or convince, to really to listen, to understand, to figure out where people are coming from. We're going to try to take action together, a lot of the productivity to be able to make sure that we can kind of keep moving a pace through the process. We're going to step back and learn. How did that go? What do we need to do differently? And that inner circle is really a cycle of learning. Only organizations, the only collaborations that really get results are ones that create a learning environment. We're going to try to set that up for you all through this process. And then finally, over time, all of which is oriented towards a shared vision, results you desire for your community in the future. And all of it's held in place by a culture of collaboration, how you all work together as a community. It won't be because of just the technical expertise. It won't be because of one decision here or there. It will be how you create an energy signature across your community, the flow and exchange. And this is just how we do things in Steamboat. This is the way we show up and solve problems together. And again, that gets set by the kind of direction that you all as key leaders do. And the last little piece of information I'll share, and then we'll have a little discussion about this, is a lot of times when groups like Community Builders and Civic Canopy are brought into processes and we try to figure out what's going on, the story that we'll hear is one of interpersonal relationship challenges. So-and-so screwed us over. This group had this terrible thing. We broke the relationships here or there. And that will feel like where it's the place to begin, is broken relationships. But the research is really clear. The nature of these problems starts much higher up in what we call the grippy model. It's about clarity of goals. What's the shared future that we're all unified to be about? What's that bullseye of the results, the vision that's carrying us forward? That explains about 80% of collaborative challenges. Can people articulate the same future together? Can they talk about the goals that they're working towards? And then secondly, roles. Do I know my role in this story? Do I know how I'm showing up, what I'm supposed to be doing? So we're going to spend a fair amount of time tonight trying to pull from you how to play your role best as kind of the process stewards from this. And then if you get that right, then having good processes, good procedures, and then sometimes there's just intractable interpersonal relationships. That's just the nature of public work. But they're far fewer than we might think. So hopefully if we can do this process well and get really clear in the early stages of that shared future, what you all want for your community, the results you're trying to get, and make sure everybody's got the lane that they're working in and understand that role, that will take care of an enormous amount of the challenges in the future. So I'll pause there and turn back over to Clark to kind of walk us through what, if anything, from this kind of connects with you and applies to your role.
You want to see if there's any questions?
Oh, yeah. Let me pause there, just try to keep it short, but if I move too quickly through things, or if there's questions about that, or pushback, or wonderings. It makes general sense. High quality process sets in motion commitment, creates an energy signature within a group that brings people in and builds that sense of effectiveness.
Makes sense. Let's get started.
All right.
Good stuff. So understand, as we're talking about that, we're applying these models not only to the dialogue that you all are starting tonight, but much more broadly to the entire process. It's really what we've tried to create is a process that cycles through learning and collaborative problem solving and solution finding, tests those, let's see, okay, what do we get? And we're gonna keep swinging through that. So it's important for you all in the leadership roles you occupy to have an understanding of the orientation we want to take into the work so that you can model it, which is something that you said coming in tonight was something you wanted to be able to do. And then also participated in it in that way. So with these things in mind that we just covered, sort of first discussion we want to have tries to sort of situate each of you as individual leaders, right, in this. I just want to open the conversation for a few minutes on, in light of what we just heard, I'm going to ask you guys to help me here. Why don't we pull this one off? How do you all want to show up as leaders? Think about it for yourself right now. You know, this is just sort of how do I, Clark Anderson, based on what I just heard, what I know about my community and sort of challenges and opportunities we're exploring here, how do I want to show up to this? Anybody want to get us started?
I'll go. I think an important piece of this is letting go of any biases you have, or any judgments you have, and really be open to questioning and listening to different perspectives without judgment. I just think that's really critical because everybody who's involved brings value. Everybody who's involved brings knowledge, expertise, experience. So I just think it's very important not to come into things already having made your decision or what's the right answer.
Yeah. Be very hard to be a leader in this and say we're committed to a process, but actually already have exactly what you think is going to be the only way forward in mind. Yeah, yeah. Anybody else?
Assuming good intentions in all of our interactions with one another, that we're all have the same goal.
Everybody's trying.
Your motives.
Yeah. That's a thing that we, it's frustrating how often we forget that those of us who sort of take the time to sort of spend our evenings, meetings, and with our positions on these things, but we're trying to do good. We don't always, sometimes we mess up, but I think that's a great way to have that orientation, assuming good intentions. Who else?
I want Steve's. I think just that open-mindedness, that inclusiveness, creativity, and just knowing that it's okay for all of us to have, like Brian was saying, is have different intellectual ideas on this, but knowing we're shooting for the same process and that, you know, our community is stronger when we're together, when we work together.
Yeah, okay. As a leader, that's valuable too, at the, you know, what you said there at the end, the idea like we're trying to do this together. Others in terms of how we want to show up as leaders. Yeah.
Also just offer that I think it's important for us all to be supportive as well as engaged and champions of the process. I mean, in terms of we're in the process, let's let the process work, let's support the process.
Supportive of the process.
Supportive
Yeah.
of the process.
Yeah.
Right, and you know.
Which may be hard sometimes.
Exactly.
Because there's going to be a point, especially for you all who are, you know, you guys are in decision-making roles for these two bodies that are sort of the fundamental implementing bodies of anything that may or may not happen out of Brown Ranch. So the ability to sort of trust the process takes a little bit as a leader, right? Other ideas, and I'm not gonna force everybody to go, but we want to try to get people oriented towards how you guys want to show up. Yeah.
So clearly I'm at the table as a city council member. So I look at my role as a leader in representing the community.
What do you think that, talk a little bit about,
So.
what is it like to sort of carry that into this in a way that, yeah, talk a little bit about that.
I would say while I have my very strong personal opinion about affordable housing and supporting Brown Ranch, I have to also show up, making sure that I am representing the community and bringing up community issues I may be hearing, so we can talk about them as a group.
Anybody else? Do you think you want to be able to show up, or you hope other leaders, and if you sort of have an idea on how other people should make sure they show up, but you don't want to say it quite that way? Yeah.
I think it's important to show up with a common understanding of what we're all trying to lead. Maybe not just as an individual, but if you have a collective understanding of what we're trying to lead, that's how you get the effective part.
Yeah, it speaks a lot to what Bill was talking about, where things break down, 80% of those collaborative breakdowns come when we're not clear on what we're trying to accomplish, where we're trying to go. Which is one of the reasons why, significant part of this process and this effort is, let's begin by trying to get shared direction on where we're trying to go. And we'll come back. I know the process that we are going to be going through with you guys in your community is one that is not simple and linear. We're going to try to make it as digestible and easy as we can for you guys and for the community. Every month, sort of where are we on this thing? And let's make sure we know where we're headed. So other thoughts in terms of what you think are going to be important in terms of how you show up as leaders in this? Yes.
My background's in communication, and so I would say respectful communication.
Yeah. How do we do that in a moment where, there's this really important dynamic in something like this where we really want to be able to disagree. We have to be able to, and we have to do it in a way that's respectful. So, I mean, with what you bring, I just want to add it all to that.
Pardon me?
So would that, in terms of how we show up respectfully, but in a way that's like also able to be hard on the issues, but not each other?
Sure.
Yeah. Might just sort of state, you're like, yeah, that's what I was saying.
Sure.
Perfect. Okay.
We can agree to disagree. We can vehemently agree to disagree.
Yeah.
But we have to move on. We have to be respectful in the process.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
I'll add to that in terms of effective communication. And not just between the board and the council, but we also have 3 other organizations, DSD, PCT, and the general voting
Community.
public.
Yep.
On how do we effectively help that communication? How do we open our ears enough to understand how other people are communicating?
Yeah. Yep. Thinking now, we're going to wrap this up, but just thinking briefly about what you guys learned last time. So I'm going to sort of reshape. From what we learned last time, those who were involved, I'll ask the same question. How do we want to show up this time that might be different from the last time in terms of, your effectiveness as local leaders?
Well, the task is different this time.
Say a little more. Not to put you on the spot.
No, the task was very clearly defined when we walked into the room the very first time to negotiate the
Right.
agreement. The end result was already out there and defined. And our job was to somehow figure out how to make that real. That's not what we're doing this time.
Yeah.
At least I hope not.
Anything else?
I think the key difference, which is what is really exciting with this process, is that we're going into it as partners we're working together as a community, not looking at it from perspectives of like, Joella said last time was negotiation. This time we're a partnership for success in finding affordable housing. And I think the word partnership is the key important opportunity and difference here.
Awesome.
Catherine, thank you. That's exactly where it is. I think the big difference is instead of it's us against them and what we can embezzle or get out from them because it's a developer that's trying to build something, tainted the entire process. And what we really are the city council who's appointed the board. It's us negotiating with ourselves. Why would you create an animosity or a challenge with that? And so one thing that makes this thing a whole lot different is that we're here today to start off on the right foot and not the wrong foot.
Figure out how we do something together.
Right.
So important orientation.
And actually, Michael, this time we're walking together. It's both feet.
Exactly.
Excellent. And then, it's great for me to see as I look over from what you guys are saying and I kind of look at the ways you guys entered into this in terms of what you want to experience. There's a lot of alignment. So this is really helpful and I think we'll be able to bring some of these things together and out of this, there's some, I think, real orientation you all can do to answer that question you all have been asking at the city council meetings in terms of, how do we show up effectively as leaders?
Coda has a.
Oh, sorry.
Something really quick.
Please.
That I think is very different, and that's bringing you all to the table as well, or, into the room at least, where we can have some support. I think this is a really big challenge that we're taking on, and we didn't quite have the tools necessary. So these are great tools that will hopefully help us be more successful.
That is also a perfect segue into what we're gonna do next, because you're right. I know, I didn't even.
You told me to say that.
That's right, yeah. So want to give you all some credit and sort of also just sort of set the stage, like thinking about the landscape you guys are working in. And to your point, this stuff isn't easy. Anybody ever heard sort of discussion around the difference between complexity and complicated? Like a watch, who's wearing a watch? Is anybody able to just sort of put one of those together?
Pretty complicated.
I mean, it's complicated. Now, how about a garden? Raise your hand if you have a garden. So apparently that's not very hard, right? Wow, you can do it. So here's the question. Has anybody ever been able to make their garden the same season after season? Right? Gardens are complex. Okay? If you take the materials and follow the process for building a watch, you can do it the same way every time and it will work every day. And that's how they work. It's freaking complicated, but you can make it work. I am not a great gardener, clearly, even though I've been doing it for 20 years now. And one thing I've learned in that is that gardens, like communities, are complex. It's a lot of inner working systems, and we can't actually know everything about them, which is why even if I put my seeds in the same way every year and do all the things the best way that I can, it just comes up differently because there's too many different factors at play. And communities are the same way. So we have to acknowledge that when we're dealing with community problems, we're dealing with complexity. And complexity, when you're talking at the community level, we're talking about markets, we're talking about the local economy, we're talking about policy, we're talking about capital investment and existing infrastructure and how all of these things play off of a political, cultural, socioeconomic environment that are all come together to create a place. And the place is what we're trying to help move forward in a way that's productive, works well for everybody. I mean, at the end of the day, that is what this work is how do we make our communities thrive and make them work? And I just want to say, as we enter into this, it's not a clock. There's no perfectly right way, and we can't do it the same way every time, right? So we just have to have that respect and appreciation for complexity. We also have to appreciate that in this particular moment, that complexity is heightened by the fact that it's a tough time to make these tough decisions because there's a growing level of divisiveness and we are struggling as a society more broadly to agree and disagree productively and respectfully, to your point, to the level where, as Bill talked about, we take in as humans We read the vibes in the room, so to speak, and we behave in accordance with that. And as we follow national, state, all the different politics out there, we are all taking in the vibes. And so it's become an increasingly divisive environment that we have to work in. And we have to be intentional and serious about saying, we're gonna cut through that and push. Sort of, it's like trying to, I play soccer. I'm not a left footer. It's like, if I want to learn to use my left foot, it's going to be weird and awkward, but I have to try. So we have to use the muscles and flex the muscles of collaboration and inclusivity and good process. They're not going to always come naturally, but that's one of the ways that we push through this. And as we model that, and we've seen this over and over again, your community will, the sort of effects of good collaboration and good process, they last far longer than that individual project or whatever the question is you were looking at. So we can put in place foundations for longer term civic capacity. So with that, I want to hand over to Kale. Bill. Sorry, my bad. We'll all learn that I sometimes get off.
And just to pick up on Clark's notion of complexity, how many parents are in the room? Fair number. So you've been given a PhD in complexity, because one of the hallmarks of complexity is not, as Clark said, that it's just difficult. It's that every solution creates a new problem. How many of you parents had a strategic plan for your child when they were born? How many of you threw that away by day 2? It's not just that your map was not accurate. It's that the very act of having a plan for someone created a response from the child. So as leaders in the community, your very attempt to create solutions creates new problems. There's interaction effects with community, the feeling like, who are you to tell me what's true? Like, we are human beings that are wired to be preserving of our autonomy. And so it's not just that, as we try to map out the process that's in front of us, we know a lot about what this will take. It's just that we don't know what it's exactly going to look like on July 7th, because you don't know how your idea is going to be received and how people are going to be responding to it. So your job as leaders is infinitely more complicated because of this idea of complexity. Someone want to read that out loud? I love coral readings.
The mismatch. When we experience the world as too complex, we are not just experiencing the complexity of the world. We are experiencing a mismatch between the world's complexity and our own at this moment. There are only 2 logical ways to mend this mismatch: reduce the world's complexity or increase our own.
Well, if you've ever experienced this in your roles as leaders, what it's like to feel like you don't understand something that someone wants you to understand, or that you can't provide what they need, and they're mad at you, they're frustrated with you. It's easy to kind of reduce them. They just don't get it. They're being unreasonable. But what their experience is the frustration of not understanding and expecting people to have challenges. So we get in these loops of 2 different forms. And this is the last slide that I will be dumping things on you. So apologize for this, but I've seen this 10,000 times in my own life in every public process. The typical loop we're in our culture is the one on the left, where we're essentially responding and reacting to some threat in our environment. And not just in your role as public leaders. This is moving through the supermarket. This is in your day jobs. This is with your families. That there's some problem, it activates our brain and we're threatened by it. And our first response is to create some reaction to contain it. How do I stop this source of anxiety? How do I calm this situation? How do I put this fire out? And when we're in that cycle, we tend to kind of maintain our identity. I'm a competent adult. This child is not supposed to be out of this chair in the Home Depot. I am an effective teacher. My class should be in control. I'm an effective public official. I should know what's going on, and we contain it. We reinforce an identity of how we're supposed to be acting in this moment. Most of us have no idea how to solve the kind of problems that you're dealing with. These are really complicated. Nonetheless, our brain is trying to kind of force us back into a definition of containing the problem. But when you look at organizations or collaborations that are in this mindset, their performance is this kind of cycle of up and down reactive responses. They don't achieve results because they're just keeping things in check. And eventually the pressure builds and it gets really difficult. when we kind of do, as the slide said, when we evolve our own level of complexity, we kind of level up in our work and recognize, I don't know everything. I can't expect to know everything. I need to respond and be open. What we find is a different kind of loop. We try to, instead of reacting to the world that's coming to us, we create the world that we want to have. We move towards some shared goal, a future state that does not yet exist. We bring our passion, our energy, our trust, our progress, our new thinking, our optimism towards that, and we drive towards action. And as you get momentum, people want to be part of it. It attracts engagement as you're making progress. And over time, it might not be perfect. There might be bumps along the way, but that's the signature of a group that's leading from a desired future. And it's really hard because what's coming at you is another threat, is a reminder of what you don't yet know and what you're supposed to know in your roles. Really difficult role, but if you can just remember, this is what gets results, is being in a cycle of driving towards that vision and creating the conditions we were talking about in collaboration. That's the secret to a winning strategy, that at the end of this process, when we look back on it, this is the one you want to have, the upward inclination of trust, the upward engagement of your community. And that's going to require you accepting that your identity is in evolution. You're a leader in progress. You're someone who's learning along the way, and you're vulnerable in that. And so if we know this in advance, we can take kind of different steps in the process to not assume that we're going to know everything all the time in this process. We're going to create learning cycles that allow us to kind of reinforce that. Pause there. I can't remember if there's anything else we got from that. I think we're going to pause. Responses to that, or actually, why don't you turn to the person next to you real quick and just digest that. Did that make sense? Anything you wanted to clarify on this this slide about what leadership, the literature of leadership looks like? Take a quick turn to the neighbor next to you.
Makes sense.
Very warm.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
You're like, well, it is so much.
Trying to have all the answers.
Yeah, you need that.
It's in person, that's, I'm not going.
Do you think it's
Well,
You think something is everybody.
I think that's
Here, maybe. And I get we're here.
How I was.
Not a lot of.
On either side, you know, if I.
Everybody.
Oh, yeah, this is how we do this.
Sounding pretty exciting. Yeah, sounds good. How is that?
It's been this is really good. So he's not like, you guys wanna-
I hope so. Yeah, come back together.
Like.
First of all, thank you for,
Very much. I'm starting.
I know,
It's your fault.
So don't-
Thanks for sitting through that. That's, as I say, 25 years of research and experience. You were very good listeners through. What are you talking about? What, is there anything that's stuck? Anything you want to remember? Anything you want to clarify?
It's really hot in this room.
Fair point.
It's all right.
Let's just do it. Yeah. Take immediate action on that. That is not a complex.
Freeze out you guys.
What's that?
So we're in therapy. You gotta like remind yourself of how you were feeling last week. Was I being reactive last week or was I focusing on my vision?
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, it's every day, it's every moment of life. This is this choice we get of how, are we leaning into it? Leaning away. Someone says, are we playing not to lose? Or are we playing to win?
Like a lot of ego on the left side.
Kind of protecting ourselves to the best we can. It's a scary world we live in. Stepping out of that and thinking about the greater good. What is it the community needs?
Something that was coming to mind for me, looking at these and then comparing it to what's written on the wall over here. I think this is all inclusive of everything written there, is that we have to remember that we set the tone and we have to be disciplined around that. And that the tone that comes out of this group and the project groups is what the community will latch on to. And that's gonna be a daily, weekly reminder, whatever the topic is. That we have to stay disciplined to that.
I so appreciate you saying that. And this is against impossible odds. I mean, public leadership in the culture we live in right now is so difficult. You are going to be each other's best source of remembering that. It's hard. We set the tone. We're sending into the universe signals about how we want this to go.
So one thing that's important to add on to that as well is that this is, it's vision driven. So being clear, like this is where we're trying to go. And in doing this the way you guys are doing it and making the decision that we're going to step back, we're going to hold a deliberative community process, we're going to get some help, and we're going to work through this. You actually began with a vision or something completely different, and we're beginning to execute on that vision now. So remembering, because sometimes you're like, well, where do I get to put my thumbprint on this? You guys have, and there will be more opportunities. We're going to bring in ways for us to continue to lead from behind and get the community where it's trying to get to. But just in deciding this is what we're going to do and we're going to do it together, you're sort of charting a different vision for where we're going to move forward. I think it's
Now it's
on to you.
All right. So now we're gonna get into like, what does this look like in practice? How do we actually get this right? There is something really, really valuable about saying what we want, which tends to show up as values. Values tend to be things that are hard to disagree with. You might look up that list and think, well, I'm not gonna be like anti one of those of like, God, creativity is really stupid, right? Like that's, that's not the nature of values, is they're generally all good things. But what happens when we experience conflict within collaboration is when these values come into tension with one another, right? And I think a perfect example of this is actually what you brought up, Jim, of respect. Well, what does respect look like? For just in like a household terms, for some, respect is taking your shoes off when you get into the home, right? For others, they're like, whatever, shoes on households. Maybe I've got kids and it's gonna get messy anyways. It doesn't really say to me like, this is gonna be a sign of like, do you respect me, right? So I want us to take these things that we've thought about as kind of aspirational terms and put them into brass tacks of like, okay, what does this really look like to us? And as we go through this discussion, I might even lean into like surfacing some disagreement that we might have. Because it's easy to say like, we want all of these things, right? But what is it gonna look like in practice? So what I'm gonna have us do is think through, what does successful collaboration look like in this project between the city and YVHA? And we're gonna name it in particular to your roles as partnership in this as the overall stewards of this process. What does it need to look like in practice to have strong collaborative partnership. So you're gonna get a second, and I'm gonna, because it gets loud in here, what I'm gonna do is to call you all back. I'm gonna raise a hand. If you see me raising a hand, you are going to also raise a hand. And if your hand is raised, then you're not talking anymore, right? And that's how I know you're gonna come back to me. Because I'm not the best whistler. So that's how we're gonna do this. So I'm gonna give you time for each of these. So the first one is I'm gonna give you time by yourself to go ahead and add each of your sort of ideas for what this looks like in practice onto an individual sticky note. So each idea is gonna be its own. Then I'm gonna have you get together in pairs, and there's gonna be one group of 3 to go ahead and share your reflections, and then we're gonna come back together as a large group. So instruction number 1 means for this first part, you're not talking. So go ahead and take a minute and start adding down your ideas of what does this look like in practice to have strong collaborative partnership between these decision-making bodies.
When we think of practice, we were talking, this could be behaviors, structures or systems. Practice, like because you guys might be like, oh, well, we got it. It's creativity. Take it down a level. What do what's the practice gonna be?
Do you need a new marker
I got you. Here's one.
for this partnership?
Facilitators never far.
He's everywhere. You guys do this, we're gonna go get a beer.
Yeah.
No,
Oh, you want one too? Okay.
Not if you put your hand up, you're done.
Yeah, exactly. That's your reward.
It's kind of like.
Take about 20 more seconds, wrap up your last thought. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get into pairs. I think there is one group of 3 that emerges in this. And go ahead and share your reflections. Start to kind of group things together if you had similar items or agreement on something. And then you can keep stuff separate if there were like different things that came up. As you're talking about this, if you hear something from your partner that sounds like one of these high level values, and you wanna get into more of like, what would that look like? I want you to ask, how would I know that that was happening? You know, how would that show up? That kind of thing. Okay. Go ahead and get into your pairs. I'll raise a hand when we're coming back all together.
Make it easier, the three of us, you guys want to get three? Or-
I don't feel like, I hear like, how you came out.
Yes.
You know, like.
Say. I've got.
Right there with. Now, I think it's the
Willingness to compromise. There's no condition. This happens from here. That's done.
That's just hard.
Just getting it done.
We don't have. Not very.
Get around action, maybe like. There's no.
If we don't.
Rather than trying to.
I think it's just something it's taking. I don't think they vote by. They vote by. The fact that it's a big deal. I feel like that. They're not involved. Right. Consistent in person at council meetings, like it isn't about data, it's about being there demonstrating transparency. Issues, any like mess ups. Yes, you're transferring on this. I agree. There is. We can't talk.
Okay, so y'all did pretty good, but when your hand's up, it doesn't mean that you stopped. Okay.
I can do that.
Thank you all.
I wasted a lot of paper.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna practice a little bit of thinking through like how to handle complexity in this moment, because I'm gonna have you take the next step, a share out of as a large group. But this could take a long time for each group to share out, right? So I'm gonna have us start with a group that's willing to volunteer. And they're gonna share out an idea that they had in their group. Ideally, if you had two ideas that already came together, share those out together. And then I'm gonna invite anyone who has a similar idea to also raise their sticky note, so that we kind of start grouping things that are similar that we heard. And so we'll share out one idea, other folks will raise theirs, and I'll have Clark and Bill go and grab those, and they're gonna start grouping them up here. Next group is gonna go, and basically at that point, you're sharing what unique ideas you have, because ideas that were already mentioned are now grouped. Does that make sense?
Quicker.
Yep, okay. Is there one group that would like to go first?
Pick on you.
Michael, go ahead. Thanks, Muntean. Yeah, I'll go first. We always kind of start there. We like that.
Yeah, we like
One of the main points that we had was a plan of action.
Does anybody, oh, do you want to say more?
No, just a
Okay.
plan of action.
Okay.
Keep it simple, I don't want to take time.
Does anybody else have similar things to a plan of action? Okay,
We do too.
great.
There's ours.
Thank you. Okay, what's your next one?
Setting clear, realistic expectations.
Realistic.
You have something similar? Okay.
You want to say it?
It could be plagiarized,
Okay.
you guys can, something.
I think you should say.
Yeah,
We
make her
have
say
shared
it, make her say
vision.
it.
We can still be efficient, but.
I think it's similar in the sense of, I wrote clear understanding of how people get involved and how we actually hear board member voices.
Okay, and I appreciate this distinction because you got even into some of the like clear expectations about these specific roles that you wanted to see. So you can feel free to add those things if you want to say, yeah, mine's similar and I want to add to that too. Yeah, did you have something to add?
That's fine, yeah.
Yeah, Counselor Wes and I, we talked a lot about values, and in particular, we had long talks about two values, patience and accountability. We kind of unboxed that a lot, but I think both talked a lot about values and how that's important to follow as a group.
Okay. Did you see that as connecting to clear
a new one.
expectations or a new one?
I think that'd be a new one.
Okay,
Sorry
Great.
if I cut that short.
No, you're good. We're gonna keep we're gonna go through all of theirs and then we'll keep going around. Great. What's your next one?
Well, this goes with that one. It says agreed upon outcomes.
Okay.
It goes along that same kind of bucket.
Great. Okay. Any other important ones that you want to lift up?
We have two that work together. Never operate for personal gain and respect and stay friends.
Okay.
And we have a goal one that goes with that one. Previous.
I feel like these two are gonna go with that one.
Respect, stay friends.
You're gonna read them?
Yeah.
Say it and then they
One second, I know we're chatting with folks to kind of figure out what goes with this, so we're figuring out never operate for personal gain, respect and stay friends. What else do you want to add to it?
Safe place to share ideas and disagree and confront issues in a kind, respectful way, not talking badly behind people's back.
Okay, so that would be the behavior maybe that we'd see not talking.
Respect, open sharing, we had open sharing of ideas.
Okay. Anyone else? Have similar things?
We had what Dakota was saying, which is agree, but once we sort of make a majority decision within this group, even if you would think about it differently or do it a little bit differently, being a champion for the vision that or decision that's been created as you talk about it within the community.
Okay, so adding that on at like a certain point, if a decision's been made, moving it forward.
We had another one, kind of the same thing, like inclusiveness, that every voice is important.
Okay,
Agreeing to disagree.
okay, that goes with that one too. Great.
And this,
Okay,
it just says being a team player and supporting ideas respectfully.
okay. Great. All right, any more?
Our final was follow through on commitments.
Okay, anyone else have something similar in kind of accountability?
I guess this is accountability, honesty and transparency of.
Okay, honesty and transparency of current data.
Just like,
Tell me more about accountability on that one.
I think it's more like the honesty and transparency values and like, even if, you know, the data is a little convoluted, like how do we promote the tone and message of like, this is us being honest and transparent best we can.
Okay.
And we had transparency also. It's
Okay,
very
I think that
important.
might be its own category.
Yeah, I do
So-
too.
Yeah,
We have another one with this one.
yeah, clarity of action.
Clarity of action, that's in accountability.
Yeah.
Okay. Bill, will you put that one with accountability? Did you have an
Like,
accountability?
we had transparency, which
Okay.
I thought ties into it.
For your one, I'm thinking about some of the experience you guys had. Is some of this about the fact that sort of a big challenge was there wasn't always accountability on different sides last time around what is and isn't real. So like information went out, data, but it wasn't always like, is this, because you guys talked a lot about misinformation. Is that where that was coming from, or more just in the way that, want to make sure I'm not reading into it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a part of it for sure, wanting to make sure that the data that we are putting out is honest and transparent.
Okay.
And that, you know, we operate on that level of
We're
honesty
holding
and
at that level of
transparency.
holding ourselves to that accountability.
What's your version of transparency?
I was looking at it both with what Dakota's saying, but also, we are, governmental agencies particularly, and we're very focused on community inclusiveness and engagement. We need to be very transparent on when we're having discussions, when we're sharing ideas, both amongst each other, but also to the community at large.
Okay, so more of like a general communication,
Well, I think
transparency.
it's more than that. It
Okay.
ties into the accountability, because like Dakota said, if data's coming out, we need to make sure that we're all seeing the same data, we're sharing the same data, we're talking to each other, we're sharing ideas openly and in a transparent way, so it's not, so as I said, this is a collaborative community process. I think I don't want to look backward, but like, executive sessions, we need to be in open meetings, that type of deal. Even I was thinking today, I was wishing we had an owl so the community could see who's talking, because I mean, there could be people listening right now, and like, who is that? So I just think we need to have an uber focus on how what we're doing is very transparent and open to our community.
Good, accountability to a solution of focus on solutions,
Okay,
not problems.
okay, okay. So that's another dimension of accountability there. Okay. All right, so now that you all have exhausted yours, we can go in either direction. Let's go ahead and go this direction. What other ideas did you all have that haven't been talked about so far?
One of our ideas was letting new voices be heard, that really strong collaboration means allowing those new voices to be heard. We have new council members who didn't go through the whole process last time, new housing authority board members, and that in order to really be collaborative, we need all voices heard.
Okay. You might have something similar.
We had listening first.
Okay. Take us to your next idea.
Be on accountability themes
No,
or a new one?
this is new theme
Okay.
that I think we had a previous one around inclusiveness too, that it might go with. And then listen first was attached to this as well.
Great, okay.
Yeah.
So feel free to bucket if you deem appropriate, that we can have hard conversations and disagree, but still be united and role models for our community.
Okay. I think we might have a similar category a little bit from earlier.
Yeah, it's sort of this productive disagreement, or just kind of productive, teamwork and dialogue, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. What's your next one?
The next one was leaving no stone unturned, so that it's exploring all options and not just one, that we feel like good collaboration and like a really strong partnership means that we are open to all options. We're not just focused on, okay, this is the path we're gonna take and this is the only path we're gonna explore, but that there can be parallel tracks. We can be exploring multiple things at once because that's what's gonna bring about the best ideas and the best collaboration.
Did anybody have anything similar to that?
We did. We had broad and varied solutions being explored.
Okay. This gets into our creativity value. What's next?
Those are our main three then.
Okay, all right, on to the next group. What ideas did you have?
One that I think actually kind of falls into realistic expectations is acknowledging the past, but not dragging it into the future.
Okay, and I heard that, I think in yours a little bit too, accountability to thinking, forward thinking. But I hear a little bit of a difference here in like acknowledging the past. And so getting that right balance right is something that you all will have to figure out. Okay. Anybody else have something similar to that?
I have, like, in addition to shared realistic expectations, I would like to get even more basic than that and agree upon like terms and goals and definitions. So I think like, you know, for the housing authority, we have a very clearly articulated mission, but I don't think that city council necessarily has, you know, a similarly narrow mission. And so I think like, even do we all agree that affordable housing is a problem and we're here to collaboratively try and solve it? I think that having like really clear terms and definitions is important. Another example underneath this, I live outside the city limits, but inside the housing authority zone. And so what do we mean when we talk about community? Is community just voters inside Steamboat Springs? Are we talking about the school district? But like, who are we referring to? So again, I think for me as a new board member, it would be really helpful if we did kind of like the baseline ground setting work of like, what are our definitions of these terms we're all using, but maybe we all have different ideas of what those terms mean. So.
Did you have something similar?
Yeah, like a complete understanding of key assumptions.
Okay, complete understanding of key assumptions. We're gonna be here a while.
Yeah, buckle up.
Plenty of lasagna.
Okay. Anything else from this?
These gonna be better.
Okay.
Too fast, too furious.
On to Leah, Gail, and Jim.
Feel like everything that was on our list has already been talked about.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I might add, right, which is no surprise, right, from a process perspective, would be just regular communication and regular meetings. And I think that funnels obviously into accountability and transparency.
Okay, regular communication, regular meetings. I want to get that onto a sticky note.
Yeah, where's the?
I can write it down.
Where's the transparency?
I haven't.
Yeah, we've hidden the transparency. Sorry. There's your header and there's a subheader.
All right, so then, and we captured all of those that were similar of regular communication, it looked like. Okay. All right, so Reese and Joella, you wanna go next?
Yeah, I think the values was a big piece. And to echo what Cole and Jessica just said about defining what those key assumptions are. I think that's really important, and because an example of that was something that we talked about. I asked, hey, what, patience, what's that mean? And Joella said it's containing frustrations, both inner and outer. And then I was even thinking, well, patience on the broader scale of this whole project, I could see there being some divisiveness in, okay, is this patience up until, the deadline of when do we get this on the next ballot? Or is this patience defined as it's gonna take as long as it's gonna take? Right, so defining what that value of patience is gonna be important, I think.
Did anybody else have a similar theme there around like? How we wanna show up around how long things take?
I'm pulling out an article. We did not talk about this, but something that came to mind when I was listening to others is the notion of slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Yeah, another word, a way I've heard that is like go at the speed of trust. Is like, once you've got trust, things can move very quickly, but you gotta go slow to build that trust in some ways. Great. Okay.
Friends, I'm from West Hill, Locker Band, they said that. Is it?
Okay, anything else? Oh, sorry. Anything else that you all had in your group that you wanted to raise?
I think we just turned in our paperwork.
Okay.
I got the one. You guys had on it, you also had humility, inquisitiveness. No one is counting wins.
Okay.
In addition to patience.
All right, on to this group. Cole and Brian.
All right, mine's very vague, maybe not too vague. I had data driven, meaning, when in doubt, let the numbers guide us.
Okay.
But you had a good take on that too, that was interesting.
Do you want me to talk about our conversation more broadly?
Yeah.
What was interesting is you came up from a very data black and white point of view, and I came at it from a very political point of view. You spoke a lot about facts and misinformation. We need to beat that with facts. And I was saying people vote based on vibes in the room. It doesn't matter about facts. And so we actually were perfectly paired because we had the opposite. And so my thing, the last one I have is compromise and accept that the final product will not be perfect.
Okay. So let's go first with the data driven. Anybody else have something that's around knowledge, rooting ourselves in good information?
Data driven one. Just one.
Just me.
Just one.
Spoken web thinker.
Can we put Cole's near Dakota's
Yeah, I was gonna
piece
say
around
Dakota's-
transparent? Cause that wasn't, there was an overlap there.
I'm gonna throw an audible here too.
Okay.
Since audible's now there. I think that, interesting enough, I think what Brian and Cole just said is the perfect, they complement each other. You guys were a couple, but I'm just saying that the data and the personal stories and the personal vibes are what makes the best results. Because we know we have to have data, but we also have to recognize what the community's vision and goal that they can accept are. So I think the partnership of that data and what Brian said is a perfect path towards success.
Okay.
So I think, I don't know where you put that piece of paper now, Clark, because I think it kind of encompasses.
We'll just tear it in half.
It encompasses
Data and
everywhere.
driven. No.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because what you got, the dynamic you guys described is you're both right, right, we're gonna need information here. And we're also gonna have to recognize that we're doing this in a post-fact world. Like that, when people say that, they're not joking. That's a real challenge we have where people don't believe in facts because they say, well, whose facts? However, what we can do is talk about our values, and then we can bring in information in a way where we create learning, shared learning, and that's so that's a reason when you guys talk about patience, one thing is gonna take some patience, is rather than just coming out and saying, here's a, white paper with all the facts, now let's move next step. We're gonna say, here's a lot of information, let's talk about it, let's learn, let's get pushback. Why do you think this isn't real? What's missing in those numbers from the people that are participating in a way where as they engage with the information, they build trust in it and it builds on the political side of this. With no particular agenda on either side. It's just sort of, because you guys are both right. Like, we're gonna need information because it's a complex issue and we need to sort of lean into the information that's out there to help us come up with good solutions. And to your point, Brian, like, I think we see more and more in our society that that's not what's gonna ultimately decide where the community wants to go. So I think, but we can marry them together. And hopefully you'll see when we come back in a minute to sort of the process flow, those two things are pretty well married together in the design.
But I want to get to Brian's point around, did anybody have something similar to that in shorthand vibes?
This post-it, it's the compromise and that the
Okay.
final product won't be perfect. I guess
Okay.
This can go under teamwork maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, we have another one that's sort of,
Yeah.
done is good.
Yeah, understand that done is better than perfect.
Anybody else have something around compromise?
Yeah, there's the first one.
Okay, all right. We ready to go to the next group? Okay,
It's covered.
you handed in all your paperwork. Great, okay. How about for you all?
We had, well, two. One is communications outside the council YVHA cohort to the community, the effectiveness of that. And the other is understanding and simplifying the complex.
So both pieces in some ways of communication.
Yes.
Okay, great. And I'm kind of looking, I think, do you all have a similar communication one?
No, I have something different.
Okay. Do you have one more?
No, these were already covered.
Okay, great.
I think like with your complex one, that one sounds a little bit like the data too, at least for me, like the data was really complex. Hard for me to understand at times, hard for the community to understand at times.
Secret to communication.
Yeah, how to make that really easily digestible by the masses.
There's a fine balance there though, because the more you simplify it, the more you get accused of not being transparent.
Right.
So there's a knife's edge to walk.
Okay, and then I think you've
I
got
have-
one more for us?
I have two, and I cheated. I put two on one. Recognize the opportunity to change lives. And we have an opportunity to create something special.
And I hear in that really like, keep our purpose at the center in some ways.
Yeah, and in fact, the shared realistic expectations kind of, there's a vision, goals and clarity of, so we might have two in that one too.
Goal, there's a nice guided by purpose.
Okay. So now we can kind of see this visualized for us. Is there anything you'd want to add as the folks who were seeing all of these notes come up of like themes you saw?
The only one there was, I just wanted to make sure I was gonna move this one to teamwork, but I didn't want to miss something. Acknowledging the past, but not dragging it into the future. This seemed like some of the ways of communicating that were related to teamwork, but I didn't want to, that needed its own category.
No, that almost sounds like purpose too, to some extent, because I think just based on that one, I'm thinking like, don't forget the people that we're trying to serve.
Oh, okay.
Don't forget the past, but look towards the
Forward-looking
future.
orientation.
Yeah, but it could go either way.
Whoever's this was,
Oh, I was thinking teamwork.
and were you the author of this one?
Yes.
Okay, though I like this point though. All right, great, thanks, Kayla.
Okay. As you look up here, I think Brian and Cole, I want to appreciate you all for stepping into this of like, where is there disagreement, right? Or just where do we need to balance two things that are both good? Anything else that you see that we should be aware of and almost watching for that could pop up? Where some of the different things that we want to get out of this process could be in tension with one another.
I don't know where this fits, but I think it's along the process and having like regular check-ins with the community. I don't know if that's like large polling or what, just to understand, are we moving in the right direction? Is this process working? Do we need to like pivot?
Okay. Would you add that as one more thought
Yeah.
in there? Yeah. Yeah.
I think a natural conflict, it might be under communication. My experience on council, people think we are the housing authority. People come to us, we are in meetings every week. People come in public comment and they ask us about things that are happening. We don't have the data and we're not intimately involved. And we immediately react and ask for information. The housing authority, yes, the meetings are public, but nobody asks questions. And so the question is, whose job is it to communicate? Whose job is it to address those things? How do we partner when the council, we get angry emails all the time, people publicly commenting, the housing authority is operating on their own. How do we bridge that gap in communication so that we look cohesive? We aren't just tossing the ball over to them and they aren't just like, well, I wasn't in my meeting, so, you know, we posted about that a week ago. Like, how do we have just seamless communication when we work asynchronously?
What are thoughts from others about that? Yeah, go for it.
I think it goes back to the roles slide and like each group positioning the respective subject matter expert as that in the community. So I don't know, like procedurally, I don't know exactly how to accomplish that, but I think that's a way in which there can be a little less confusion as to who's doing what and who's taking lead on housing as a matter and in terms of.
But can I push back on this? Do we have time to like go into a detail?
Yeah.
So we were in a council meeting. We had someone come at a public comment and say that they were getting bullied in the building. There were issues with their unit. They were about to get evicted and they had all these issues. There was nobody in the housing authority in that meeting. Nobody in the housing authority followed up with them. And so how do we handle that? What are we supposed to do? That's like a hot potato. That's a big deal. Like it should be addressed immediately. I'm personally not comfortable as an elected official being like, oh, somebody will get to you. Like we kind of need an answer and we need to be able to tell them then and that night, you will get an answer. And we need to publicly show that as well because we need to show the public that we're doing that. So it's like, that's nice procedurally, but I don't know how that works in practice.
Let's go to Dakota and then Kathy. And then Lou.
So I appreciate all these comments. I think, you know, there is a board representative, myself and Steve, in those meetings on council. We sit on the Housing Authority Board, or Steve's alternative. So we could be that point of contact to follow up potentially, or at least put them in contact with the right person. And I've done that a number of times, like forwarding Jason emails that I get, asking, can you respond to this or help me understand before we make a decision on this. And then I think to your point about process and procedure, there's time in every housing authority meeting for city council to make public comment. And that might be a time, if that's an expectation we want to clarify, for me to bring up, or whoever the elected is, any community concerns that we're hearing and needs that maybe you all aren't hearing, but I am. Those are just a couple thoughts.
Go for it.
Well, having sat in your position, one, public comment is exactly that. You don't control what someone says, nor are you expected to immediately make a decision that night. I believe you have a process to refer it to the city manager and let them follow up, and they would follow up with Jason. I totally agree with Dakota and recognize Steve may have an ability to respond immediately, but if they don't, they can follow up. So whether it's housing related or somebody comes to you about a fire issue in Clark, they get 3 minutes and it's their turn. And don't feel that you have to immediately respond that night because you want to respond with the most quality information you can get.
Accurate information. I guess we have a values difference. I don't think I need to respond to them with a solution, but they need to know that they are heard and that they will be helped. That's something I personally pushed on council, that we start to respond to public comment because it's cruel and cold. We don't need an answer. We do need to let them know that we hear them and there is action. So I think we just have a values difference that like, I actually don't feel that it's just a time that I can be like, thanks for coming, bye. Thanks for telling me you're getting bullied, bye.
Do you think your
Hold on.
president can?
Wait, because
I'm sorry.
I promised
Okay.
Lou. There you go.
This is, you know, in all transparency, Brian and I have had this conversation several times. And the discussion, I believe, comes to the heart of the relationship between the YVHA board and the council itself. If there was a problem with Public Works and there was an issue, there might be a representative of Public Works there that could answer a question from council. But often YVHA is not there. And is that intentional? Is that something that should happen? To me, it is the crux of the I won't call it lack of collaboration, but it's structural in nature in many respects. So from that perspective, if, you know, there is desire among the council to respond in some form or fashion, what should that response be? Should that response be, I'll get back to you later, or, you know, YVHA rep, could you come and say something to that, or something different? I don't know.
When we set up the organization for the Housing Authority, there was a specific recognition, not only that the city and the county were money funders, a contributor, but to recognize the communication ability. And that's why part of the representation of the city and the county who vote and sit on our board, that is part of what they can do if they choose.
From just a thought on this, I think what this is actually indicating is that it might be a good idea for us to meet as joint boards on an occasion, on a basis, to talk about ideas, suggestions we have on ways that we can better work together and help our community. And a situation like this, just a friendly thought, because I agree with Brian. I mean, it's when people are up there and express a heartfelt concern, you want to at least say that, you know, Tom is our new city manager, which, by the way, great decision, city council. You know, but, you know, please look into this. And I'm just wondering, in the interim, in a situation like this, Brian, if, you know, if Jason or someone's in the room, yes, talk to them. But if not, say, you know, Dakota, Steve, can you please reach out to the Housing Authority, ask the question, and then you guys get back to council the following week. But I really appreciate you bringing that up, because I think there's probably throughout the year, a lot of great ideas that we have as Housing Authority board members and council, and how we can, you know, share ideas and just, you know, help our community more. So really great point.
Can I just add one final, like my final part? That I would encourage any council member to reach out to Jason if you have questions or concerns about a specific public comment or, you know, something that you're hearing in the community. It doesn't have to be just Steve and I communicating. I think that this partnership is really about you gaining your own trust and building your own relationship as well. And let us know if we can support you in any way too.
And I think from the Housing Authority perspective, we're trying to increase our communication with City Council by setting up sort of the board buddy partnership. So, you know, feel free to reach out to Jason, but also to your buddy, or anytime anyone, please feel free to reach out to me as chair. You know, we definitely want to assist and be helpful in terms of responding. And I think if council has a shared vision about how YVHA can be a more active participant in terms of addressing community concerns, I think we're open to hearing what that is and trying to participate. I think it's hard for us to understand what lane you want us in, and I think we don't want to overstep our bounds.
So one thing that it's a great exercise on two levels. I mean, one is it's just great to see the communication and you know, conversation around it. You know, and I think we want to remember, like, everybody around this table is in it for the right reasons, right? So nobody wants to not be responsive to the community or anything like that. The question is, how do we do that effectively when we have these two organizations that have multiple and in some areas overlapping responsibilities, but also very clear mandates of their own. And so, you know, the point you made around opportunities to begin, you know, greater levels and quality of coordination and collaboration is hopefully something that can work. And it also speaks to the importance of communication between you all in this process and beyond. Because one thing we can be sure of is if we're hearing, you know, this stuff's going to come up. There's going to be things that come to during this process and outside of it. So being ready to be able to share openly with one another, here's what we're hearing. And then of course, you know, you have leadership in the room on the staff level who also are a part of another kind of team here. So within this process, we'll have the space to work on these things. But these are, you know, I know we're talking about things that aren't necessarily part of this process, right? So being able to sort of outline, okay, you know, when things like this emerge, to your point, it says, all right, this is indicating a few things here. Let's do kind of make sure we're clear on how those things go. And also, one of the other beautiful things about carving out time for joint meetings like this, it's really important to understand for the city council's role, really where sort of what are the things that the housing authority is running into? Because you want to make sure there's a two-way flow of information in terms of like, here's some things we're hearing from the community, especially in the context of something like housing. There's context and understanding there that as the collaboration and dialogue becomes more, you know, consistent over time, you as council members will be more prepared to answer on the spot because you'll have that understanding. So good, you know, good dialogue. I didn't mean to take over. I just wanted to sort of acknowledge it's a good thing.
Absolutely. And, yes,
I just have one thing to add.
great.
I think there's the city, the housing authority, and also, as Kathy said, the county is involved in the housing authority and plays a key role. And I think maybe the elephant in the room is the land known as Brown Ranch is not in city limits. It is in the county. And I think we forget to engage the county sometimes. I think the county and the housing authority have a great relationship. They came and did a presentation at a BCC meeting last month, which was awesome, and it went over very well. But if this group is unsuccessful in finding a partnership for the city of Steamboat Springs and that land, it is in the county. And I think that has to be addressed, and that partnership has to continue to be positive. And we need to look at what the option is then, right? If this land is not annexed into the city of Steamboat Springs, if that is what this group decides, then it is in the county. And so I think that is something that is often overlooked in this process of what is that next step. And then the other thing, which was the original question of like, are any of these values appear conflicting? Are any of these things conflicting? I do think like patience and plan of action are conflicting. Like, and I think maybe that's what you guys were getting at. But we want to be patient. We want to go through this process, as Gail said. But the reality is that people want action, and there's a lot of community members where 2030 going vertical, 2027 ballot is too late for them. And I think it's unfair of us to not recognize that and to not say that out loud. I think Kathy's right that we can change people's lives, but we could also change them for the worse, right? Like we are losing people, and I think a lot of the people who this project will affect don't live in Steamboat Springs. They live in the county. And so I think making sure that we are recognizing that, making sure that we are cognizant of that throughout this process is going to be key.
I mean, it's a real delicate balance. It really is. And we've experienced it with the project collaboration team, right? Of like sort of the pace of action and the pace of process. You know, they can be at tension with one another, but we also, you know, to what Bill presented earlier, one thing we know is the thing that's going to be the most costly of time is process failure, right? So, but keeping those two things in mind as a balance is great.
Right. And Halifa, do you have any ideas on how we could engage the county more, include them more in this process, or county residents, like?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this in our work session today, like should the alternate commissioner be here and both Commissioner Macy's and Commissioner Redmond wanted just me to be here and said that like they had faith in me representing their voice, which was awesome. But I think one of the things is like that you said is that could be most detrimental is process failure. And so we want to engage in this process in the best way. We want to be collaborative partners, the county. We want to make sure that we are helpful in whatever way we can. But if this fails, then what? Then we're starting this process all over again with the county. We really believe that we should be doing that simultaneously in parallel, looking at what is the option of working with the city, and then what is the option of working with the county? Can we do that at the same time? And that's maybe an open question to you guys.
A question I had to maybe offer a whole third level of looking at that is, you mentioned if it doesn't work with this in a partnership with the city, then the county. Another whole way to look at it is, what does it look like if those three entities are sort of saying, let's all three, and I actually talked to the county manager during the situation assessment and asked that very question, like, what does it look like to have these three entities collaborating all together on this? Because you have implementation capacity in different places, and you also have policy roles. So it's something when we talk about, how do we explore all options and be open to different ideas? It seems like something you guys would certainly want to explore.
I wanted to, and I agree with you, is that process is important. The process cannot be an excuse for a lack of sense of urgency. And that is my concern. And I think we have to understand that it's not so much even that if this fails, we're back and we're going to do something else. It's almost really, if this fails, the bus, the train, whatever you want to say, has already left the station. We already have too many people who are moving out and are going other places because of what's going on. So I really think that we have to constantly question ourselves and say, let's not lose sight of that this is an urgent situation. And we can't let the process just drag on and drag on and drag on. And yeah, we need to enroll every voice in this, every voice needs to be heard, but we also have to make decisions and we have to move forward. And I think that we have to balance, but I don't think we can just lose total sight of the fact that this is an urgent situation.
I'm gonna go to Gail, and then we are gonna transition to the next section, so I'm gonna have you be the last voice just in here, but then we're gonna keep flowing this into the next conversation.
Okay, well, then maybe it is for the next conversation. I was just gonna ask that question, right? I mean, we talked a little bit about early on, we need to trust the process. We're gonna be champions of the process, right? So how do we build in that then, progress and accountability and transparency, so people understand that we're trusting the process, but we understand that it's urgent in terms of the need, right? I mean, so that's what I would be interested in. And as I say, if we're going to talk about that in the next phase, let's move on. But just trying to understand that tension and how do you work around that?
Yeah, I think what we're gonna do is give you guys just a couple minutes of a break in case people need to go to the bathroom and come back together, get going on the next set, and also just we'll do a time check on our side and make sure we can figure out how to get through the next pieces in the time we have. And so I would say, this is not a long break. This is sort of like go to the bathroom, say hello, right, yeah, bye.
5 minutes. Which means, yep, thank you, Bill.
Back in 6:55.
Not salt. feel about it.
This.
Like,
Like, what do you
it's the
mean?
best,
I
it's just
think
like a
it's
gap and like.
like, there's something
Put it in what lane.
I know.
Yeah, so because at least when something's there, you can ask Tom to say, hey.
TikTok, yeah, still going on, right?
There, because you're not a department, then it, but then people feel weird. So
But I mean, I really, I like.
just as gap, and I would like, I would love for people to.
Don't have to get close. I mean, if it's a live station thing, then I say. Pick up the phone. It seems like-
As on the Ground Ranch gets closer, we're gonna get entries of like some that.
Lack of a different,
Yeah.
there, in my mind, this is differences. And class, some kid that comes in and says, I'm in your building, it's unsafe.
For the next 3 months, you get public comment, and then I've got the things like, we're not really involved in the history of Ground Ranch. Nobody has responded, I've never been person, that's really bad. Whether you would rent it or not, people all say, he deserves the respect, right? I participate. Or it's not there, it's like, I can fit with them and I can. They never will, they don't go to your. Just.
Email. Mail. Just, I mean, just.
Yeah, great, yeah.
Yeah, I get to a little bit of
Fact, they disagree with. It's still. They think.
But I was like, yes, no, you should, in line, yeah.
Very excited. Like, I don't think, you're not getting that.
But like.
And so he's trying, he said it himself. And when you're not getting, it's like, all right, here's the breakdown of the situation, here's the stuff for you to take. It sounds. Because he knows he's in the loss.
But I think there's. Yeah.
Demographics in the United States.
Janelle has.
It's on the person, we need to show that we are reacting, because everybody else.
Transition here well.
That's why I do not.
Like, that's why it's like very. I don't know how, I think that's fine.
Yeah, I'm like, hey, this is wrong.
You just keep like.
I did know. I hope she's got she has 6 weeks off.
Yeah, I mean,
That's my concern, we need to build.
First elected official I've heard that says you want to actually respond.
It's really rude. It's very rude. Speaking of safety.
It is because it must be misinformation here.
I mean, yeah, she's part of it.
Not only. Ways to get his life.
But I told him, my comments were like negative.
Throw Bob grenades. Oh, God, this is horrible. And, you know, at the end of the day, that's why. It sounds like. Let us go find out what's actually happening.
We heard that.
I mean, if the house is. By you.
But I'm not trying to answer.
No.
Big picture, there needs
Okay,
Want me to do the whistle?
come on back.
I know this is really dark. And you gotta have, that means that. Yeah, sure.
I don't enjoy this stuff. But you just made a great point.
And then those two slides.
But. But I am working hard at it.
That was a good guess. It's all given.
All right, we are committed to getting you guys out of here on time. That's one thing we're gonna do, in general, when we work with you guys. So, we have a decent amount to work through, but we're feeling good about getting there because some of what we're gonna lean into now, you guys started some of the conversation. Okay? So, the shift we're making now is from a place of like, how do we want to collaborate and work together? What does that look like both as entities and as leaders? And then now we're shifting over into, what does this process actually need to achieve? What do we need to get out of this to feel more certain in our ability to move forward, to make sure we're responsive to the community and we're getting that kind of clear plan of action that you guys talked about, right? And as you can see, there's some things from what we just talked about that pull right into that. So I want to just bring everybody back. So everybody, starting on a level playing field here of sort of the overall flow of the process. The stage we're getting into, or the phase we're heading into, is really about creating a foundation of, we have shared understanding of the challenges and issues and realities that we're wrestling with here. So what are the problems? What are the opportunities? So beginning with that shared understanding, that's going to be really important to having productive dialogue, because to the conversation we had earlier, if we're coming and having a conversation where, we're just completely in different places around whether there is or isn't a housing problem, or whether the community's ever going to grow or not, that'll make it very hard. So we're going to build a base of shared understanding of, our current realities. And then we're also at the same time going to begin developing shared direction in terms of where do we want to go with this? What are the solutions? What are that we want to explore? What are our goals for Brown Ranch? What are the principles we have for Brown Ranch? I want to acknowledge this, a lot of work went into the principles in the past. We're going to revisit and say, okay, now let's look at that again, so that we're getting to that place of having shared kind of unifying vision that we can work from. And that's kind of that guiding light vision of, big picture, what do we want to achieve with this? And then the second stage is like, okay, how are we going to do that? What's it going to take to make that happen? We're going to test and refine solutions. We're going to work through the places where there's tension between solutions and ideas. And over time, working cyclically through this, we're going to start to agree on the strategies and actions that are going to get us where we want to go. We're going to bring all that together into a unified strategic framework. Learning and collaboration and deliberation are going to be sort of central to all of it. So that's the process flow. And a lot of words, sorry. The reason I put this up here, you guys have seen it before, but just to remind you that this is happening through these three process structures, one being the collaboration team of the city and the YVHA, and the other being the deliberation and stewardship team. It's not problem solving team anymore. And that's the sort of group that we're going to be working with very closely to go through sort of a cohesive set of dialogues. And then finally, broader community engagement and public involvement. So those are the sort of ways we're going to move through this. This is a reminder, and I want to hand off to you to get us going into this next part.
Okay. And as we get into thinking about what we wanted to achieve, we've been at the level of like, how do these different groups work together? There's another piece of this that as we're thinking through what's important at this site, what do we need to consider? What do we need to think about? What's the urgency? What's the need for patience? All of those things. We also have to step into thinking through what's your role with those three teams that are going to be working. And I want to just get crystal clear about the kinds of different communications that it will take to make this decision so that we're all on the same page about what these terms mean, to somebody else's point earlier about different terms. So how many folks took a public speaking class somewhere in your education? Great. How many of you took a public listening class? Oh, actually, that's the most that I've ever seen.
That was a joke.
You're gonna have to watch that. But most often when we think about communication about how to make decisions in public, it's within the debate category. Debate is great when we're thinking through that there are different sets of facts that we need to decide between in some ways to determine what's the best option, usually out of a set of two options in some ways. Because this is a much more complex issue, that debate brings out some of the things that are the worst in human nature in terms of competition, arguing, digging in, all of those types of things. But the best part of debate is that it is rooted in often, well, we hope, knowledge and facts, and that it is fast. It is getting us to a key decision point. Now, what we've talked about in this last section of thinking about how slow to move, how fast to move, where to spend time on process, relationship versus getting into the actual decision making, I want to bring in so that we understand there's two different types of communication that groups can go through around dialogue and deliberation. Dialogue is largely what we're doing tonight to seek understanding, to build a sense of what our different values are, to build relationships, to reach across. But dialogue is probably the longest out of these processes and is non-decisive, which can lead us to that frustration of like all talk and no action, right? But it does get into who are we as people who care about our community and how are we seeing things differently? And this is particularly important when the problem itself is contested, right? Because if we don't have a shared definition of the problem, it's very, very hard to get into what the ideal solution for that is. So then we're going to go into deliberation, which is where people come together. I got my master's in public deliberation, and I feel like it's not a very sexy word, and I always have to explain what it means to people because we tend to just hear about it when it comes to like juries deliberating if I'm in a court case, or if I'm watching reality television and the judges say like, and now we will deliberate, right? And so basically it's about how do you get a group of people to really consider the facts, the information, the perspectives, and come through and think through what are the possible choices that we can take. It's a slower version of what debate does. It bridges some of what the values conversations does in dialogue and the knowledge and information in debate. So throughout this process, we're going to need to balance both of these, and each of you are going to show up in different places along this spectrum, depending on what you need at any given point. During this first phase, when a problem is not, or we may have to define the problem, and we need to start thinking through what are all the possible solutions, right? Not just one single one. That requires the dialogue side of things. But oftentimes this leads to a place known as the groan zone, where we have literally just overwhelmed ourselves with the amount of complexity involved. And we're like, just tell me the answer, right? Sometimes we acquiesce to decisions at that point just because we want it to be done. We want to get to clarity, right? And so on the deliberation side is where we start synthesizing, okay, what are all the possible options? How can we narrow down? And that's going to be our role as facilitators, is to work with you all to think through, okay, what's the large scope of this? And then how can we continue making it more and more accessible to allow people to engage with it easily in the community? That's going to get you to that decision-making point. All of this is to say that we're going to be balancing the fast and slow in this, the tensions that you've already named in some ways. But that's going to be the purpose of each of these stages. I personally will miss deliberation. I am so irritable. I'm the worst participant when we're in dialogue, to be honest, because I just want to get here, right? But I also have to recognize that there's different pieces of this process that if we skip this part, and I've skipped it before, and boy, have I learned, right? That if we're not on the same page with that, then we don't have a shared sense of the problem and we can't get to the solution for that problem. But it's gonna be a constant balancing act. And now I'll.
Can you go back to that
Oh, yeah.
one real quick? So this may feel familiar if you actually think back to sort of the process flow map that we showed. Essentially, phase one, we're gonna do, as to Kale's point, we're gonna go in and out of dialogue and deliberation, but this early phase, really, it begins more with a space of like, let's open up the space. Let's learn, let's try to understand, let's explore potential solutions. But we're trying to enter into the second phase with, shared direction and what's possible. At that point, we're gonna have to get into making choices and decisions and refining and prioritizing. And so while we're gonna do this sort of in, multiple times within each part of the process, another way to think of the process overall is that the first phase is probably gonna feel a little more opening up so that we can get into that space of deliberation that's really looking at everything that's possible. And to you guys' point from earlier, this is another place where there's some tension. You guys say we want to be open to all these ideas. We want to make sure we're listening and understanding. Well, that's inherently, we have to open up. But then we also want a plan of action. We got to bring it together. It needs to be clear. That's bringing things back together in a refining way. So awesome. Great. Well, we're going to finish out tonight with trying to create some more specificity in terms of, what do we need to accomplish at key either points in the process or in terms of kind of critical components of the project, right? And so we're gonna move through this pretty quickly, just in the interest of time, and fill in what we can. And the hope here is to begin giving you all, it's a couple things. One is to create that clarity we all need to understand sort of, what is this actually gonna get us? What do we need it to get us at the other side? Sort of products, outputs, outcomes. Like, what do we'll organize it on our side. You guys tell us what you think that you need for us to be able to move forward. And when we talk about moving forward, there's going to be a couple points in the process that are designed in where we're going to have to come together and say, did we get where we needed to here? The end of phase one will be one of those points. We'll have to ask the question. Brad's been very intentional about saying there's nothing predetermined or pre-baked into the idea that there is sort of, this is going to get us to a solution at Brown Ranch. If you were listening to what Bill was saying today, part of the idea of sort of guiding with vision is the best way to get to where you're trying to get to is to begin with yes and figure it out. But we're at a place with your community where we really have to first start to a place of like, let's see if we can get there, right? So thinking about this in a way, it's sort of, what do we need at these stages of the process to be able to feel comfortable, like, yep, we're gonna move forward, we have what we need, we have the information we need. We're gonna break that into a couple different pieces now all together, and you can think about it sort of starting with these process elements or components of it, and then what do we actually need to see? What does it need to look like? What do we need to produce? So we're gonna have you guys do this in a pretty fast way. We can do the sticky notes again if you have them. Does anybody? Wow, we'll be fine. So let's begin with public involvement in terms of like what you guys need to see to feel like we have gotten it, that the public involvement has been successful. Just take 30 seconds and jot down your first couple ideas, one sticky note per, and we're gonna move pretty quickly. We're not gonna have to get everybody's because we'll collect the rest of them on your way out. But we'll move pretty quickly through this. We want to just begin generating clarity in terms of, where do we need to get to feel like we did it?
Are you talking about at the end of the day when this is all over with?
Yeah, yep, that's right. We're gonna know that this, we're entering into this process. We want you to begin thinking about the end. What's it gonna take to feel like we were successful? And we're gonna go through that in terms of a couple different components. One is overall this public involvement.
This is the end of the public involvement, not.
Yeah, like when we've kind of gone through this whole process, what do you want to have accomplished? Is it too confusing?
How long is this process gonna take? Not tonight, but.
10 more minutes. No, just kidding.
No, not tonight. But
so
what's your projection for how long?
We have this sort of slated for about a 12-month process. So we want you guys to finish this up, by this time next year, so you have time to do any other stuff you want to do for moving
Do
forward.
we have
So
an opportunity to like share ideas on the process?
yes,
Is that gonna be, sometime tonight?
Yeah, I think you can do it right now. And the public involvement in the process, like. it will
This
go
is
in-
not a public involvement. I guess it kind of is that.
Well, hang on and we'll capture it for sure. We'll give you the space to give us that for sure. Okay, so let's go ahead and move through this one. Actually, should I put them all out and let people? respond? In the interest of speed. Okay, so here's the different elements we're gonna go through. So you guys can pick, just in the interest of time, we're gonna put these all up rather than going through one at a time. When you think about these different components of the process, so we're gonna be doing public involvement. There's gonna be a very robust public involvement process. We're gonna have to have project communications. We're gonna have to build that shared knowledge of information. So we were talking about data and understanding current realities. We're gonna try to build a shared vision. So we have that direction we can work towards and what Brown Ranch could look like, what we want it to look like. We're gonna identify possible solutions, and then we're gonna end with a strategic framework. You guys can pick, I'll give you guys a little more time. You don't have to answer for all these. Go to the one that you find most compelling or where you have the most information for. Maybe this will help give you a space to provide your input. And if there's something that we didn't capture, that's fine. Give us another component and we'll discuss it. But so you're really trying to help us identify what are the things we need to see? What do we need to accomplish? What needs to happen? What are the sort of outcomes specific to each of these that we need to get to feel like we got to a place where we're able to move forward. We have the guidance we need to feel comfortable moving forward. Okay, so I'll give you guys a little more time since we gave you a pretty big list. You don't have to answer all these. Go to the ones where you feel very concrete and clear in your thinking. Shortening the time we have for this.
Yeah, and just a point of clarification, what do you mean by move forward? Make a
Okay, so
decision?
maybe a good way to think about it is, as we've talked about with you guys at city level, like we're gonna have to, there's gonna have to be a decision. Maybe we do this for phase one, like there's gonna have to be a point at which the end of phase one, like we know, are we gonna go forward and like really keep looking forward for solutions? We're gonna go into phase two. Phase two is gonna have to end. You guys are gonna have to know, are we gonna move forward with Brown Ranch? Like, are you guys gonna go do it? Right? Because you're using this process to gauge whether the community, whether you've got a clear vision from the community and a set of informed community strategies that you can carry forward. So what would you need as decision makers to feel like we have, what does a shared vision need to include for you guys? What does it need to look like, feel, provide? What do the solutions need to provide to you guys to be able to feel like you can move forward?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
How does this tie into the community area plans that we've developed over the past 30 years, including the one that we're working on right now, that defines West Steamboat as a key part of our urban growth boundary?
So that might be, like, in some ways, that would be possibly part of shared knowledge is like, for you to trust this decision, you would need to know that it connects to the current work you've already been doing around growth.
But I think that
I wanted to know more specifically, like,
my question is, I just want to make sure that we're not contradicting the great work that a separate group is doing right now on the community area plan.
you want to speak to this, Brad? Because we talked about this.
I wouldn't be fearful of a contradiction. I mean, in many ways, this conversation is in the driver's seat relative to the opportunity on the west side of town. So just so you know, from the community plan perspective, that was scoped at a time when there was a presumption that Brown Ranch was going to be annexed. And therefore the project was really going to try to understand the full set of implications of that annexation. Obviously, a different picture emerged after that project started, so.
I guess I was referring to the like Vision 2020 and
Sure, sure.
2030, or the area plans that was in, over the past 20 years, but.
So Catherine, I think one way to sort of maybe interpret your question and turn it into sort of something that we're talking about here is like, we probably need to understand, this process needs to help us understand the role of West Steamboat in the community's future. And we have to understand that Brown Ranch is not sort of an isolated chunk of land. It is part of something we've been planning for West Steamboat, which is a place where you've identified the future's growth trajectory. Is that what you're trying to get at? And you're saying like we've already identified that, right?
Yeah.
So, right, so part of, I think what you'd be saying is, I think an outcome is we need to sort of help the community see and then build strategies around the idea that we've identified this area for West Steamboat.
Yeah, I just want to respect all the good work that
Sure.
other groups are working on right now and have worked
Yeah.
on.
So respect, so there's a couple of things you could say. There's one, understand the sort of growth and development context of West Steamboat, and the other is respect the work that's been happening, the planning work that's been happening. Great, I know, we're at that point, and speaking of, for people who are really tactical and they're like, oh man, where's the specifics? So tonight, remember, we're going into the growing zone intentionally. We're at the beginning. And we're short on, we want to get you guys out on time. We promised we would. So we're gonna do this pretty quickly. You want to jump in?
Look at it. People, as you're writing them, if you could help us know which of those categories.
Yeah,
you're
so
in.
who wants to start? Reese.
Oh. I was stretching, but I'm done.
You can get us going. That's what you get for stretching. Careful, if you're like you can end up with like a trip to Mexico that way somewhere. Hey, it's going for the in the backyard.
Okay, you want me to just rapid fire these off or?
Just give me one.
All right, just take one. Which one do you
Your
want?
favorite one.
Oh, God. Here.
Okay, tell me. Go ahead.
Shared vision and agreed upon timeline.
Okay. Let's keep them coming.
I got one.
Go ahead.
That's
The strategic framework outline of all strategies, objectives, goals, actions, and who's accountable for what.
Okay, so this is in strategic framework.
Or mine might be too specific, but I'm gonna say it anyway.
Sure.
What I would like to do is, our community is very educated, they're very engaged, they're very studied. I really feel our community would appreciate specifics. So I don't know how you want to phrase this or where you want to stick it or put it, but as we're getting this great insight from the community committees and such, I would like us also to, at the same time, together in partnership, start working on draft development plans and specifics. We can share those ideas and get the input from the community, because you're doing this great community outreach, and I'm looking forward to your broader community. I really would like to be able to share some specifics, some actual draft development, some draft development plans. And I really think with the talent we have, in this room, with the board, with the council, particularly with our staff. And we've got the heads of the ED of the Housing Authority, the city manager, planner. So I want some draft development plans sooner than later.
We want people to be able to look at things that are sort of actual development concepts and plans, right?
And get feedback, yeah.
And get some feedback.
And
And so.
I want it both ways. I want insight from the committee and then us coming up and sharing ideas so the community can see specifics.
And in the interest, because we've talked about this a little bit with council already, quite a bit at our last meeting, I'll share what we had landed on there. Did you have something you want to add to that?
Well, I've had also conversations with council, and Brad especially
So specific.
on this. What we can do that doesn't quite answer what Catherine is talking about is we know where we can develop on the site. We know what can be developed cost effectively, economically, which is very important in affordable housing.
Yep.
And sharing that information may have value
For sure.
as deliberations take place.
Right. So, bringing that type of information in would be very good. So if did you have that one written down?
Yeah.
Because that would go under the knowledge one. So real quick, Catherine, while I'm grabbing the next one, there's important that we do two things at once. One, recognize the need for, people to be able to think about specific, whether it's building types, development layouts, the specifics that are needed to be able to move us forward, while also saying that this project is not designed, nor is it resourced to develop the development plan for Brown Ranch. What we can do and what we're preparing to do is get to a level of specificity that people are looking at things, for the specific sites where we know that things can happen, and look at those as strategies that then whoever's doing the actual sort of final physical design and planning from you guys' team, right, has very clear guidance that is reflecting what people are talking about. So I think we can make those two things true at once and get there. So other ideas, yes.
It's commit to a schedule. To Steve's point.
Yeah.
I agree that this is urgent. And so I think we should, if we could, commit to a schedule. My recommendation, I'm a schedule guy. My recommendation is 8 months with a report in January. Understand that we are not going to get consensus
we're gonna try and find what the majority wants with Brown Ridge, if we get that lucky.
Yeah.
But everybody's not gonna agree with what we come up with.
Who else has something?
About that is the communication, and even the detractors feel heard, even if their issues are not fully resolved.
In shared knowledge, I said that, I'd like to see decisions made on facts over fear.
Under public involvement, I have the survey results.
Oh, okay.
Emily, that was for you.
Facts, home.
I'll talk about it.
Again, see, maybe it's public involvement, maybe it's communication. I would like us to understand the disparate and complementary ideas that are coming from the public. The link between all of the groups that we have, DST, PCT, city, county, YVHA.
Right, so if I'm understanding that right, it's both hearing what the public is saying, but then also you're saying you want to understand the communication links between these, like how are these gonna talk to each other?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. We've been having some good conversations as a team about that. I'm gonna put that under kind of in the bridge between communication and public involvement because it's a little bit of, it's a little bit of both, right? Yep.
Under possible solutions, I want to make sure that we're talking about a variety of feasible plans so that we're not just kind of dreaming about what could be, but things that are actually possible to implement.
Right, okay, orienting on feasibility. That's something we've been, yeah, good. I like that. Gail, while I'm back here.
Oh, sure. Communication, I just had adding to it regular cadence and kind of, again, back to that unified voice.
Yeah.
Under public involvement, the project appetite threshold, if there is one, so it's like if it's 1,000 units that we're hearing from the public and they don't want to go above that, I think that's something good to know, or maybe there's no limit.
Finding out some of those thresholds from the public in terms of things like phasing and scale and great, okay. Yeah.
To kind of build on what Reese just said, in terms of communication, making sure that we all have a shared understanding of the problem that it is that we're trying to solve.
Right, so that may be under shared knowledge.
I have another one, tied to
Yes.
Reese's, tied to the data sources, is I think we need to also know the number of households that the city services can afford. Because whatever, community acceptance is one thing, but how much, what's realistic, what can we actually afford as a community?
Right, which relates a little bit to the feasibility question too, right? So there's a public feasibility, a private feasibility. So this could go up into possible solutions, right?
Well, same as Catherine, but I put mine under shared knowledge and I put from the city perspective, budget, financial impact, infrastructure.
That makes sense, yeah. I think, and you actually said this was shared knowledge too. Well, they relate, right? We want solutions that are informed by.
And I have another one too. I'd also like to add this, how is it gonna make our whole community like a greater, better Steamboat? Because when we're doing this, we want it to enhance the city of Steamboat, whether it's more parks or whatever. We want to make, as I said, we want this to rise together, not just at West Steamboat, but make all of our community more amazing.
Where's vision?
There's two of them.
You got double vision. Double vision, but that's what I think sometimes.
Reese, did I see you were thinking about one?
Oh, yeah. I'm just gonna hand them out now. Strategic framework, metric driven, quote unquote, smart goals.
Did somebody get them?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Well, I'm still stuck on public involvement.
Great.
Because I think that it's not enough to form two committees. And have meetings of those two committees who are all members of the public. The rest of the public will sit by wondering what is going on, or they will lose patience with the whole thing. Somehow, they have to stay involved, and I don't know what the answer to that is, except that we need to make sure that the public in general shares an understanding that we believe that this is still as urgent as it ever was. And so the faster that we begin to be able to say, here are some solutions that we're thinking about, I think the greater the chance of keeping the public interested and following what we're doing, so that we don't have the ugly surprise that we had the last time.
Yeah. So couple quick comments on that, just so we make sure we're all on, you know, in a space of shared understanding. This is intentionally sort of on the foundational ground here of the public involvement. So it'll be, you know, very much, it's not a separate thing. We're not gonna wait and, you know, the public will be involved throughout. And there is one of the things we wanna do with our public involvement is we wanna be careful not to lean into the experience we've had where we think, because it's a common conception that people have, and it can often be a misconception. People only get involved when there's something specific to respond to. And in fact, people would really love to get involved and be able to provide upfront information in their own kind of casting of the vision when they're given that opportunity. So I think especially if they then see that it's responsive, right? So both things will be true, but we want to be careful not to sort of say, nobody's going to care about this until we have some specific design plans, because you guys kind of done that one, right? So let's try a way where we do public involvement, where we ask people to come in from the beginning and say, we want you to help us shape what this can look like. And we're going to then bring that information in, the relationship, to your point about how these are going to communicate with each other. We almost got the diagram in, was to really feed the community engagement into the work that these two are doing as the foundational part. So let's finish. Yep. Let's finish with any other final ideas to bring up in front of the group. If not, anything that you didn't get to put up that you don't feel is like essential to do in front of the group, we'll get on the way out. Yeah.
One public, I have three here, but the one thing is, an important element is outside of housing, to find out what the public wants for parks, parking, unit sizes, transportation.
Right. So really putting to the conversation we're just having and putting those questions and getting that feedback from the public. Okay, is there anything really important that's burning a hole in your hand with your sticky note that hasn't been done, Gail?
The thing I wanted to add is really just the cost of inaction. Right? I mean, in terms of as we talk about this, right? I mean, in terms of shared knowledge.
Is that going to shared knowledge? Yeah. Okay.
I have a whole.
Great. Hopefully if there's ones that you guys didn't place yet, we can bring them in and put them up on the way out. So to help you understand, we're going to use this to guide the conversation we're going to have tomorrow with the collaboration team, making sure that we are clear on what you guys think is necessary. And we've had a similar conversation with them. What did they think we need out of this? We're going to bring those two things together so we have a real clear sense of sort of what's necessary, what are the components, so that as we go through this process, we kind of have this checklist of things like, well, at this point, we got to make sure we've got those things done, or acknowledge that there's certain things that are going to be hard for us to pull off in terms of the resources or whatnot that we have, which is why, you know, when you brought up the point around sort of a very detailed design plan, I wanted to be clear, like this particular process isn't scoped or resourced to do that. So I don't want to sit up here and be like, that sounds great. We have to sort of be, you know, in the interest of transparency and clarity.
Just to clarify, I said
Yeah.
a draft development.
I know. Well,
I have to say that just to make sure we know that the community does want to be involved, but
Yes.
envisions and such. But our community wants to see the final game plan, so.
Totally.
I
And
think that-
we
and
want
I
to get
think-
you guys
and I
there. We
think-
will.
And this one, I just strongly suggest somewhere we have that flowing in.
Yeah, we will. And we're going to bring in physical planning and design into this process, I promise. But we're going to do it in a way that makes it digestible for the community and fit into the process and give you guys strategy and direction moving forward. So.
How do you do that when so much of our community is very busy, very overworked, doesn't have time to necessarily contribute to those designs?
It takes really good process design and activities, and you have to do a lot of different things. But and I want to bring that back to you guys, but I also want to get you guys out of here. And my team is like, gotta go. So we want to get to the end, and actually, you're handling the end.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, so next immediate steps to get into action is the DST, the Deliberation Stewardship Team, is currently in formation, in the process of being formed. So if you haven't already, if there's somebody that you think should be a part of that deliberation team, there's the link and the QR code to the website to direct folks towards to apply by the end of the week. Then the next things that we're going to be doing is our first priority is developing the strategy and systems for communication and outreach. so that the community knows what you all know now of here's what we're gonna be doing, here's the different ways to get involved, those types of things. And then we're planning for an April community kickoff and outreach on April 8th to 10th. So that's gonna be the next steps to it. Anything you wanna name about those?
No, just that, you know, when we say community kickoff, to your point, Dakota, that doesn't just sort of convey necessarily like one big meeting. It's gonna mean we're gonna be spending time doing a variety of different community engagement events over the course of a couple of days. And that's one of the ways you do it, is you give people lots of different opportunities and you go to them, and well, it'll be fun. I think you guys will learn some
Bit
good
of a
things.
tricky time. A lot of our community leaves like early April for trips and stuff,
Yeah.
but I'm sure you'll
It's fun.
do
Yeah,
more than.
we'll do the
just
best we can. We did try to steer clear of spring break.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
It won't be the only time we engage. We'll be engaging throughout the year.
consistently, yeah.
Yeah, I think just like as we're wrapping up, I think for me, it would be so helpful to understand or get more specifics on what types of strategies you guys are planning to use for your public involvement. I'm excited about the process, but in the interest of the time constraints that we all are worried about facing, I want to wrap my head around how we're engaging the public in a different way than we did the last time, and I'm sure we absolutely can, but to get more specificity around that at some point would be really helpful.
The thing that I think we'll want to talk to our team about is timing that in a way where, whether it's at a joint meeting or is it us coming to the separate, you know, it seems like it's easier to get you guys as individuals, but if we want to do this as a joint thing, we can do that. So we'll work with you guys to figure out what that looks like. And also, I mean, I think I speak for our whole team. The way we partner with communities and the relationship we want to have is like, you all can have my cell phone number and I'm happy to like talk through this stuff with you guys, and we'll help, you know, anything where you're kind of curious, well, how do I help people know about when they can get involved and things like that? Like it's, we should feel very approachable for you to be able to talk through any questions that we didn't get through today.
Thank you.
And then lastly, we're gonna do this at each stage of things, but we'd love to reflect on those pieces at the very beginning of what creates high quality process. And did you get it tonight? Because we want to know how we can continue improving throughout this process to make sure that this is going to give you the collaboration outcomes you need to get to the outcomes you need for your community. So please, if you wouldn't take a minute to
4 quick questions.
Yeah, do 4 quick questions on feedback on tonight's meeting, and that's the end.
Put that in your camera and check it. Awesome. Anything else as we wrap up from you guys? We'll let you do your cameras.
I guess the only thing is I'm still kind of wondering what our specific roles are. Are there things that we want to steer clear of in certain stages, or things that we could do to support the process? I'm still a little bit on.
I think that you guys talked about tonight that was really important was, you know, we want to show up in a way that is empowering the community, that's giving other, you know, that's giving voice to the process, that's supporting the process and trusting in it. The idea of patience was important, but also people talked about the importance of wanting to see productivity as individual leaders. So those are, you know, I'm just working off the top of my head. I mean, I think the thing for you guys to do in a general way is that. Now, if you're asking in a specific way, should we show up to community events? Or should we, right, is that what you're getting at? Like in a more tactical way?
Yeah, like, should we just sit on the sidelines and like wait to be called on for action, or do you want us to be involved?
My perspective is that it's important for people to be involved. And I know that there's been an intentional effort, including you guys, to be involved. I think there's been an intentional effort in terms of these governing bodies to provide a space for the community to come in and provide guidance on these things. I think there's a way to do both of those things, but it needs to be very thoughtful and intentional in terms of participating in a way where you can come in and say, you know, I'm coming in here today as a member of the community, and I know this was a neighborhood meeting and I wanted to come and listen and share. But I know, you know, I think I get where you're coming from. You're like, I wanna help and I want to participate and I want to be involved? Do I just kind of wait for this to come back to me? And I think there's a part of that too, where part of guiding from behind, like we talked about, the difference between being a leader who drags everybody to the top of the mountain, as opposed to being the leader who is walking behind everybody else and making sure they get there. So it's not about being the first to the top. It's about making sure that everybody else in the group gets up there. And I think you guys are trying to model that one, which is sort of the first job of you all as leaders right now, is to try to help make sure this is an effective process. Which means, you know, if people have questions, sending them to us, people want to get involved, you know, sending them to us or Brad, Jason, you know, making sure that you do the steps you can do to help people feel like they have ways to get involved. And then, and bringing information in too. If people have questions or you're hearing misinformation, you know, it's not that you attack it. You say, hey, I want to make sure you get the information on that. Were you gonna say something?
I was just gonna say, we're happy to stay and answer any questions, but want to let those of you that are ready to go, if you don't mind just putting up your stickies on the rest of those. There's
Yeah, we'll stick around for a few minutes if there's a.
You can go.
That's a good question. Every sticky is. We would love to just Steve.
Yes.
We doing this again?
Oh, right.
I